These are my immersed plant bins. They grow all different kinds of aquarium plants, and in these bins it's super low maintenance to keep them alive. I keep these plants in these bins so I can use them for when I need them for other scapes. Today I'm going to show you guys how to make your own, but first let's talk about why I keep them. Hey, what is up guys? Calem or Kalem's Fish Tanks, and in today's video we're talking immersed bins. If you find this video helpful, make sure to leave a like down below and subscribe if you're interested in future content, but let's get started. Why an immersed bin? Well, the first thing is they're super cheap. The bin I'm going to be setting up today cost me around $30 for all the stuff I'm going to use. I definitely could have done it a lot cheaper. The bin was like $18 for just the storage bin. I definitely could have found a cheaper one, but I didn't look at the prices. The other great thing about these bins is they're super low maintenance. Once they're established, I probably do maintenance only every month. They don't require too much in terms of maintenance, maybe a quick spray down, some trims of plants, and some fertilizer, which we'll get into a little bit later on in this video. So why do I recommend setting one of these up? Well, I don't know about you guys, but I am a plant hoarder, and I don't have enough room in my fish tanks for all my plants, so I set these bins up as a form of storage for plants that I want to save for future scapes. For example, in the bin up above me, I've got some Anubias jalapeno, as well as Anubias nanopinto that I don't have room for in my other tanks, but I don't want to get rid of, so I save them in these bins for when I need them for future scapes. The bin we're going to be setting up today is mainly going to be for Monte Carlo and dwarf baby tears, as well as some other carpeting plants. I don't always like to go buy tissue cultures, and it's like $13 a tissue culture, so if I set up this big bin, fill it with Monte Carlo, I can save myself a lot of money in the future, and I won't need to worry about driving out to a fish store to grab these tissue cultures. The immersed bins can kind of act like a rescue. You don't have to deal with algae. They typically get more light because it doesn't have to go through a lot of water, and yeah, that's what I've used them for in the past. For example, I had a Bucephalandra colony that got completely covered in algae. I moved them into that bin, and then slowly it recovered, and now I can take trimmings out of there whenever I need it for another tank. Whenever I get rough plants in from a shipment that just don't look like they're going to survive, I put them in my immersed bins, and they seem to thrive in there for whatever reason. These are a great way to rescue species, so you don't have to go out and buy them again later, and that's what I use my immersed bins for. Without further ado, let's talk about how to set up your own immersed bin. I've found there's a bunch of different ways to set these up, and they're all pretty well, but today I'm going to show you guys what I think the best way to set one is up, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the different ways you can do it, but why I think, you know, this way is the most efficient. So the first thing you're going to need is some sort of clear container. The one I'm using today is on the bigger end. This is a storage container, but in the past I've also used little cups like this. You need something that's clear to allow light to get through. This was an old setup I had way back that I let dry out. The smaller containers are a little bit harder. You'll need to mist them a bit more, but with a bigger container and the one we're setting up today, you won't have to mist it too often after the first couple weeks. Like I mentioned, probably about once a month. You also want to try to select one that has a flat bottom. I don't know how well you can see that, but you don't want to find one with two rounded corners because then it'll be hard to plant your pots. So you want to find one with a flatter bottom. So when you're initially starting these up, you want them to be pretty humid, especially if the plants are coming from your other tanks. For this bin here, I'm probably going to put about 4 holes in the lid just to allow for a bit of airflow. You always want to start with less and then add more as you go, but I think most of my bins don't have too much holes. It's better to keep a lot of that humidity in than to put too much holes in and having to spray them down constantly. So for this one, it'll probably be about 4 holes, and then I may get up to 8 after the plants have kind of established a little bit, but it's always better to start with less. The next thing we're gonna need is our pots. For this, I'm just using some plastic red Solo cups. Well, they're not red, they're yellow. Walmart is running a scam over there. If you want the red cups, you gotta buy them in a pack of 2. And I didn't need 50 red cups, so I had to go with this gross yellow. Couldn't justify spending the other money, but I'll show you how to set those up. So with the red Solo cups or yellow Solo cups, we're gonna need to put some holes in the bottom to allow for water to flow through. What I've found is these cups are pretty fragile and you don't want to break them, and this is what I've found works best for me. It's a bit of a weird method, but if anyone has anything better, please leave some comments in the description. What I do is I grab a sewing needle and heat it up until it's red hot. For that, it goes through the plastic super easily and allows me to make little tiny holes so not all the dirt flows through the bottom. I work at McDonald's, so I've kind of became immune to burns, but please be careful if you're going to use this same method. You don't want to burn your hands and the needle can get very hot. I use the same method for cutting the cups down to size. For example, the cups I'll probably cut down to around here. I heat up the needle and kind of make a line around the cup, and then I add in scissors and cut off the rest. And yeah, that's what I've found works for me. From there, we just add our potting mix, which I picked up at Walmart, to our cups, and we're ready for plants. You want to mist it down beforehand. What you may have noticed is that in most of my other scapes, I'm actually using aqua soil. What I've found is there isn't much of a difference between aqua soil and dirt for these setups, but aqua soil is what I have had on hand for all these setups in the past. Whenever I tear down an old scape, I save all the aqua soil for immersed projects like this so I can use it in those, and it's something that's just more on hand for me than dirt is. From here, we pretty much just need to add our plants and our water. Adding carpeting plants to an immersed setup like this is super easy. You just throw them in there, and I kind of just spray them down and allow the plants to do the rest. They'll eventually root in. You just need to lay them out fairly evenly, and they'll take care of the rest. You don't need to plant them stem by stem. You can even use trimmings from other carpets, and it will work fine. So you can see I added water to the bottom, and not a lot of immersed setups use this, but I found it really helps with long-term success, which I'll explain a little bit later. But first, I'm going to talk a little bit about some different systems you could do that are also pretty good. Now, if you want a much simpler method, you can literally just take dirt, lay it down along the bottom, and then wet it and add your plants. And I found this works pretty well for short-term projects until the dirt runs out of nutrients, and then you can run into a little bit of issues. If you're working with a smaller container like the one I showed initially, this will work fine for a really long time and you should have no problems. What I found is if you have these up for a really long time, like closer to a year plus, like the one I have over there, you may run into a bit of problems, and that's where the water feature becomes useful. I add all my fertilizers directly to this water, and I found it does a really good job spreading it out throughout the plants. You could also probably put them into a spray bottle and then spray them on the plants, but I found this just works well for me and it makes things nice and easy. As for how often I dose my immersed setups, I don't really have a routine. I just kind of keep a close eye, checking every week or so to see if any plants are having deficiencies, and if they are, then I add nutrients. I don't have like a weekly routine with these. I don't do any water changes. I just add fertilizer when the plants tell me they need it. There's also a setup I've seen going around that I hear a lot of people talking about on Instagram, and that is a layer of aqua soil with lava rock on top of it. Now, this is mainly for things like Buse and Anubias, but honestly, I don't really see the point of it. The idea here is that the Buse and Anubias will attach to the lava rocks and their roots will go into the aqua soil. What I found is this tank, or this immersed setup up here, which I'm growing only Anubias and Buse, is that the plants will figure it out on their own. They don't need the lava rock, and they'll do just fine on top of the dirt or aqua soil rooting in, and it shouldn't be a problem. I find this step a little bit excessive, but if you want to try it, go ahead and let me know how it goes, and I'd be curious to see if this method works better as opposed to just dirt or aqua soil. One of the common issues with these setups can be mold, and that can be due to not enough or too much humidity and not enough air circulation. And what I've found for dealing with mold is there's one little tiny helper you can get, and those are springtails. I use springtails in all my immersed setups and find they do a really good job. I don't usually deal with any mold or fungus or anything because they'll eat it all up. They'll also take care of any dying leaves because they're great decomposters and will create a lot of nutrients for your plants, so you don't need to fertilize as often. The final thing we need to talk about is selecting a light. For this tank, I'm actually going to move it outside and put it on my back deck in a shady area. I'll probably test it in the shade first, and if I find that's not enough light, I'll move it over. Since it is going outside, I don't want it to become a mosquito breeding ground, so I've made the holes a little bit bigger in the top, and I'm gonna stuff them with filter floss. As for if you're planning to do it inside, I've found these things don't need too strong of light. I found a full spectrum light works best because you will get nice colors out of these plants even immersed. For example, one of my bins I used a Night Crew RGB light and that was around $30. And then for the ones above me, I have the immersed setup and my UNS 5S, and that's using a Chihiros RGB A series, which is like the budget Chihiros line. And that's probably a little bit overkill for this immersed setup, but I also needed something pretty good for my nano tank. You could use a desk lamp or any cheap light, since these are so much easier to light than an aquarium because you don't need to get light through a bunch of layers of water. It makes it relatively easy to grow most plants with cheap, easy to find lights. Anything you find on Amazon should do fine. But yeah guys, that pretty much wraps things up. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and let me know if you start your own immersed setup on Instagram. Send me a DM and show it to me, I'd love to see them. I hope you found this video enjoyable and learned something new, but anyways guys, this was Kalemsfishtanks. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.